Welcome to the RSP Film Room. The RSP Film Room is an educational resource for people who are interested in learning a little bit more about studying the game of football. And what that means is that what we are using are highlights of games that are no more than 10 to 15 minutes long. And we're just discussing what we see in those highlight clips. And this is, again, we're invoking fair use for copyright, and it's for educational purposes only. So with that out of the way, I'm Matt Waldman. This is the RSP Film Room. This is episode number 31, and it is a great pleasure today that we have Will Hewlett joining us in the film room, and we're going to be watching Jameis Winston. And Will is someone that contacted me, in recent months, and has just, expressed interest in doing this. And honestly, I was glad to see that, because he probably was someone that I might not have asked otherwise, just because of the range of experiences that he has as a quarterback coach and working at the range training. So Will, it's an honor to have you on. If you can tell me a little bit more about, tell everyone here a little bit more about what you do and get people familiar with your work.
Sure thing. Well, Matt, I really appreciate you having me on. I have a passion for anything that involves quarterbacks and evaluating and coaching, and so I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for that. So just a little bit of background on myself and kind of, I guess, my philosophies and how I've arrived at where I've arrived at. Actually, I grew up in Australia. I didn't grow up in the United States. Lost my accent, but I had a passion to become an NFL quarterback. That was my goal from a very young age, which was kind of unique coming from a country about 9,000 miles away. But I moved to the U.S. to pursue that dream, high school, and then via a couple colleges. Managed to go from a small NAIA program up in northern Wisconsin. The program actually shut down. Played a little junior college ball in Dodge City, Kansas, in Jayhawk Conference, and ended up at the University of Nevada after that, and ended up having some major eligibility issues. Kind of one of those things you learn when it's too late. So I finished up my career at a Division III school in Iowa, University of Dubuque, and played a little arena ball after that with the Quad City Steamwheelers. I don't even know if they're still in existence, but had my little shot there and kind of got out of it, and got back into the world of football. I found myself, I got to get back involved, and never thought I'd be a coach, but that was the route I ended up taking. And I took a pretty non-traditional route. Most guys will get back into either high school or collegiate coaching, and I kind of fell into the camp and private coaching world, which, this was 2005, 2006, wasn't as cool as it was now, as it is now. It seems to be kind of a thing where there's a lot of, it's a pretty popular industry, I think, amongst coaches. There's a lot of new names popping up. And so, over the years, taking a philosophy in terms of coaching quarterbacks, to stick to the biomechanical fundamentals, not an opinion-based training. And I think that really helped elevate myself to, have the opportunity to eventually now open up a facility, like you mentioned, called The Range, where it's just 100%, full-time quarterback training. I take a real scientific approach. Will Hewlett, in terms of a player, was really a nobody, but I was coached by a lot of coaches and was exposed to a lot of programs, and with those philosophies and teachings from various levels, it really helped me become a better coach. Not being able to do it great, and then figuring out how to do it, and then become a coach and helping kids kind of reach their goals, has helped kind of shape the type of coach I am now. Through that process, what I started realizing about 4 years into it, that I started to see, the full evolution of a quarterback, and I never pictured myself as an evaluator, but you start to become good at evaluating, because part of coaching is projecting out, okay, well, this kid's here, this young man's here, and he needs to be here. How's he going to get there? And when you see a kid go from, 8th grade to high school to college, and then getting a shot at the NFL, you see that a couple times over, you start to really, you can start to gauge the process. And I just, the last couple years, I really just trusted um, my eye in terms of being able to identify things that coaches are looking for. Those it factors, kind of quantify some of those it factors, and that's kind of established myself as a coach first, but I feel like I can evaluate pretty strongly now through those experiences.
No, I would imagine, certainly as someone who has, I think that anybody who plays at a college level is a very good quarterback. So I think that that's the first baseline that where I would
Sure.
probably say to you, when you say you were a nobody, maybe to the general public eye, but it's kind of the
Yeah.
same way of saying, I knew lots of nobodies when I was studying to be a musician, and those nobodies were playing at levels that were far and above beyond what other people did, and they taught people to go on and achieve even greater heights than maybe what they achieved in terms of jobs that they got or consistent work, but a lot of
Certainly.
that has to do with other factors too. So, absolutely, it's a good opportunity to have you aboard. Going to, obviously as someone who has played the game at a high level and
Sure.
also is coaching the game at a high level. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about why you wanted to show Jameis Winston, because we watched Jameis Winston before earlier, but I thought from a standpoint of what you bring to the table would make
Yeah.
this a very interesting show.
Sure, certainly. So I think certainly a polarizing figure, and I think it's nice to be able to he's a known entity out there, and maybe make a little bit of a different approach of evaluating Jameis. Um, I think the guy is a pretty talented quarterback, but there's so many other dynamics in his style of play, and obviously things to wrap up off the field. I thought it'd be an interesting one to jump into, and it just so happened that I probably watched the most film on him out of all the collegiate quarterbacks this past year. I spent a lot of time watching NFL cut-ups, and I'll kind of pick and choose guys to eval just to see what's going on out there in the world of football, because it's hard to keep track of all those teams, but the trends, and I thought James would be a nice one to, a common entity everyone can kind of relate to, and he'll be a figure that's talked about for at least the next couple of years, at least, if
Oh,
not longer.
absolutely, absolutely. So what is it about his game that you see? And we're going to watch the Louisville game
Yeah.
from this year, and we're going to watch the cut-ups of that. And what is it about him, as well as what you saw in this game, that you're going to want to highlight to people as we go along?
Well, it was one of those games where, and he had a lot of those games this year where you're sitting there going, what's going on? And then they pull it off, and they kept pulling it off. And I thought this was an interesting game because some of the interceptions he threw were uh, pretty amateur, I guess. Maybe they were just questionable. Some simple things. You think, okay, at what state, what's going through his mind? I thought that was interesting, and then he makes some amazing plays on top of that, and just simple things. I thought it showcased a couple of his skill sets that are pretty strong, and I think the strongest skill set he shows is just he's clutch. He's got the ability to come through when it counts the most, making do with what he has.
And I like hearing this because obviously, you have a lot of people who will, especially folks who look at data a lot, will talk about, and they'll say, well, you can't really define those things. But I always enjoy our attempts to try to define what those things are, because they do
Absolutely.
exist. It's just
Well,
a matter.
no doubt. No, they have to. I mean, I think that's the interesting thing about the quarterback position is I feel like there's, going into the college level and then coming out of the college level, there's a non-negotiable standard you have to reach to become a recruitable Division I prospect. And once you reach that, the game becomes suddenly way more about how you process information, how you deal with pressure, what you do after you throw an interception, rather than, hey, can you throw the ball further and harder than everyone else? Otherwise, Jamarcus Russell would still be dominating the league.
Yeah, yeah. So when you, so that's a great jumping off point to start with this. What is it, I would imagine that we're going to be getting a chance to talk about technique a good bit, but where is technique a point where I always kind of figured that technique can always be refined to a point where you're ever, it's probably an ever, you're always focusing on it to some degree
Sure.
and maintaining it and trying to sharpen it. But there's a point that if you're getting the job done and you're be able to get the job done at a certain level, certain technique I would think would can inhibit you if you don't have enough of it. But there are
Absolutely.
going to be cases of people who can compensate in other ways and still get the job done based on fit. So it doesn't
Absolutely.
perfect all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think you know, so I don't eliminate my job. Um, I have to be careful with this answer because it's interesting. I do go back and forth on this. I think there's standards we look for in quarterbacks that have to be that are evident that they're building blocks, right? So you look at a guy like Jay Cutler, who mechanically, fundamentally, there's some flaws there. There's some areas that could be cleaned up. But there's also a reason why he is still in the NFL and still considered, an elite. And despite last year and things that go on, he's still elite. I mean, that's the reality of it. That arm. What happens on the front of his body when that ball passes his the front side is as good as anyone else out there. So, but other areas that he could clean up. And I think if you look at the best quarterbacks in the NFL, consistently the best, guys like Drew Brees and the Peyton Mannings and Tom Brady's, and fundamentally at their core, they're pretty sound. So they've got, you can look at it almost like the better the mechanics are, the more room for error they have. They have more room to mess up and still be pretty right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the differentiator with mechanics. It allows you to be under more pressure, succeed in little environments that are sometimes taken for granted. But then there's that's kind of like that inside the pocket game, right? And then there's that outside the pocket game where there's some guys that can do that and can't. And there's a whole different type of mechanics, I think, where you see take over outside the pocket. I think the one guy in the game right now that's got it figured out on both ends, and I truly think mechanically he's almost reached a point where he's transitioned from fundamentals to his own style of quarterbacking. If you just analyze his drops and throws, is Aaron Rodgers. I think there's actually a pretty substantial gap in terms of level of arm, the arm accuracy and speed, and then maneuverability in the pocket right now between him and everyone else. That's where I think the mechanics are great, and I think that helps. But there's a reason why Tony Romo was missed coming out of college, and wasn't missed eventually, but there's a reason why he wasn't drafted as well. And I think some of that could be the mechanical flaws he had coming out. They just didn't look right.
And that makes sense. And it's I relate it always to music because that's where I came from with it. And I
Yeah.
look at it like this. I mean, whether you listen to her music or like her music or not, I don't listen to her music, but I know that Christina Aguilera is a very talented, technically sound singer who can go on a
Right.
Jimmy Fallon show and imitate, seven different singers and sound exactly like them.
So impressive.
It
So impressive. I saw
yeah,
that.
it allows her to express a range of what she can do. So I would
Yeah.
imagine it's the same thing with a quarterback. They can express their range in a broader way. Whereas opposed to Bruce Springsteen, you might like Bruce Springsteen more than Christina Aguilera, but he's only going to be Bruce Springsteen, and he's only going to sing one
Exactly.
style of music. And if you try to have him sing something else, it's probably not going to sound very good. Whereas she could probably sing four or five styles of music, and you wouldn't know who she was, but you would say that's a good singer. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that analogy. Yeah, that's
okay,
perfect.
cool, cool. So I'm catching on. We're gonna go ahead
Yeah.
and get this thing started then. And for those of you not familiar with the RSP Film Room, we are really just two guys watching tape. We're gonna comment on what we see. We'll have We'll probably have some dead air through all of this. It's a pretty stripped down type of show. And, this isn't the definitive evaluation of Jameis Winston. It's one game. Now, Will has seen multiple games. I've seen multiple games. We may refer to things that we see from those. But it's really just a snapshot, and hopefully, we'll learn from each other. You guys will learn from what we're seeing, and any comments you want to give on YouTube, we can learn from that too. So we're going to get this thing rolling. And do you mind me rolling it in half speed just because it's a little bit easier?
No, that's fine. Yeah, not a problem at all.
All right, then we will get it going.
So I think this is just to roll right off the bat with the first play, probably something they've identified in the film room. I see this matchup on the outside, and I'm going to take it. 3 on rhythm, ball comes out on the last step, and whether it's a completion or not, it's kind of like, let's send a message. Nothing too amazing about the play, and probably not much room to complete it, but
it's like a boxer coming out and throwing a hard hook, right off the bat.
Exactly. Let's set the tone a little bit.
Okay. So we got some make-out pressure coming through.
Now, this was a good play. I remember watching this a little bit. I think there's a couple of subtle things here where I think Jameis' strengths stand out in terms of his pocket awareness. I kind of like him a little bit to Ben Roethlisberger. You see him kind of drifting in the drop, and it almost looks like he's drifting into pressure. But what he's trying to do is literally create a bigger window for himself and find a way to get that ball in there. Now, can he have stayed in the pocket and may have had a cleaner window? Yeah, probably, but still makes the throw off the back foot pretty accurately. And I think, you hear a lot of evaluations talking about, well, he throws off his back foot a lot. Well, that's kind of how it has to happen a lot at the next level. Right. I always get a crack at that one. It's like, yeah, great. He's really good at it because, 7 out of 10 snaps, you got pressure, man. You got to move around. So I think it's a good example of, whether he's in the right spot or not, he still makes the play, gets the first down, and that's a little scary back in the end zone there, which I think he's ice cold in the veins, man. He does not feel. Yeah. He's not worried about that at all.
I mean, I've written some things about Matthew Stafford because I hear a lot of people crack on his technique, and certainly there's things that can always be cleaned up. But I'm saying with Matt Stafford's arm and mobility and the windows that he can hit, you're going to live with that. You're going to live, and you're going to want him to do some of that.
It's arm angles. They're intentional. The Matt Stafford, I think, is a great example of a guy that can throw from any angle, and some of the throws he makes, no one else in the league can make because of that.
Yeah. And there's a part of me that thinks that Detroit would want to get some receivers and continue to, and they're trying to get receivers who can make plays in tight coverage beyond Calvin Johnson, and they're working towards that.
Oh yeah, and I'd be encouraged to go there. I actually played. I was at University of Nevada when Nate Burleson was there, so it was always interesting to see how he did there. But yeah, that had to be a very good spot to play at. That's an interesting ball there. So you could go back on that one, and fundamentally, this is one of those back foot throws. So we've got unblocked pressure, okay, and this is. Where do you go as Jameis? I mean, he's a 4.9 40. He's not as dual threat as people think he is, and I think this shows exactly his ability to pull the trigger quick. You saw in college he had a little bit of a wind up, with the circular move at the beginning of his throw. But a lot of times quarterbacks wind up when they don't have their feet set. They got to pull power from somewhere. I think some of the things that break down mechanically for him is he tends to stride a little bit too wide and too far with that lead leg. But no, this is a great job putting the ball only where his guy can get it, and it's not a completion. But to me, unblocked pressure with that, that's a big part of the NFL is being able to get that ball out.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of those things that you gave a really nice explanation of what Dan Marino often said, I think, at one point, saying, I would rather have a workout where he's, throwing with bad mechanics, quote unquote, or like off, he didn't say that, but like, off his
Yeah.
back foot, under pressure, awkward angles, and see how well he completes passes that way. Because this should have been
The-
caught.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, and I can relate to that in the way that I train quarterbacks. There's a two-part process. Whatever the level is, it doesn't matter if it's a professional guy, if it's a high school guy, a college guy. We we have to establish the fundamentals correctly first, but then a good portion of the training is how do you do all the stuff, all the bad throws? How do you make all the awkward throws? Because those are the ones that end up separating quarterbacks at the next level is under pressure. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Every NFL quarterback like the combine is a great example. If you can't complete those routes, then yeah, you're probably not going to make it in the NFL. But it's the stuff you do outside of that's going to keep you on the field.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like I just look at it as inside and outside the structure of the play. It's like that's really what it is to me. It's not good technique or bad technique. It's just it's structure or non-structure.
Right. Right.
And the best can do both to a high enough degree. Some
Well,
are
I think
really.
you see the tradition in college football now to go to more of the dual threat quarterback. You see it in recruiting. It's because outside the structure is so easy for offensive coordinators. Oops, I called the wrong play. Oh, no big deal.
Right.
You got to keep it running. Yeah, I think that's a good example there of Jameis being able to, move the chains. I think you see a lot in the college recruiting. When a guy's not looking for a true pro style, a true dual threat, but they want a guy that can, when the play's broken down or the design of the play, it's just a speed option play, but he can still keep it and get a first down for them. The threat of your quarterback being able to run the ball to get a first down once in a game changes the entire defensive game plan. So I think that's one of the nice things about Jameis. I don't expect we're going to see him run a whole bunch at the next level, but the ability to move the chains when he has to, I think, will be something that'll be important for him.
Yeah, I think I agree with you without a doubt.
Let's see what he does here on this one. Okay, so a nice escape there. I think the thing, as an evaluation here, he kind of goes. He doesn't really, in terms of the way the play's set up, he kind of stays locked. This is something I saw in this game a little bit. One of the big things, I think it separates Aaron Rodgers is his ability to never really let a defender know which way he's going to go. I mean, there's always an element of like, I'm going to throw this way. No, I'm not. I'm throwing this way. I saw Jameis and some of the picks he threw were just a little bit like, okay, I want to throw the ball here, and it's not there, but I'm still going to try, a little overconfidence in the arm. But in terms of, we can't see what happens with the defensive backs, but great escape, and I think you see his strength here, being able to still get the ball out as he's falling down.
Yeah.
He's a heavyweight boxer.
Yeah, he really is, and he's kind of got the thing that you like about him too that I'm sure I think we'll see in this game. I know I've seen in plenty of others is his ability outside of structure to deliver some really beautiful throws in the short and intermediate range off of kind of improvised looks.
Exactly. I think that's a nice decision here, nice placement. I don't know that it's not necessarily a poorly thrown ball. Might be a little, yeah, it's a little overthrown, but I don't think with that leverage of that defensive back, I think he intentionally puts that a little bit back inside to help that guy, have a shot at making the play here. So sometimes something is I think your mindset in the NFL is you want to win first down. Don't turn the ball over and hit checkdowns. Right, that's your mentality as quarterback, and a good good not forced throw here, putting it, in a place where, okay, if someone's going to get it, it's my guy, but not the other guy. Nice subtle pocket movement, feels the pressure, keeps his eyes downfield. Things you look for. I mean, that guy's open. That's a
Yeah. How do you? I mean, what's the kind of practice that gets involved into throwing a good deep ball? And see, I mean, it's interesting because I would see other people who would try really hard to like talk about his mechanics and with his footwork on this play or something to do with his release and talking about how he missed one throw. How do you get people to understand that this is a good throw even though it's a even though it
yeah.
wasn't caught and it didn't get to where the receiver exactly was.
Yeah. So I mean, you can get into like okay, so does he overstride a little bit? And absolutely. But I think most of the season he was overstriding. I think that's a little bit of you understand he's a two-sport athlete too, and I think that's an important thing to make. Once athletes get in a groove, this is where mechanics make you a better quarterback. But the reality is he had a ton of success doing what he did. He transferred his weight onto the front foot effectively, so the stride didn't affect him too much. Um, you know, you look for maybe from the end zone angle, and then you can see, okay, that was not as a great throw as possible. But coaching a good deep ball, I think arc and timing are a lot to do with it. Essentially, the higher the ball can go up, the easier it is for the receiver to catch it on its way down. In terms of a leverage point, when a defensive back is that tight to the back hip, if he throws a flat ball, there's a good chance of him making a play on that. So could it have a little more arc and a little more timing? Absolutely. But you think as a third-year guy out of high school, there's a lot more things that can go wrong on a play like this than right, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this is, as when I look at it just from this perspective as a receiver here, when you freeze it about right here, we're talking about a step and a half
Yeah.
short.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking
Yep.
about, if you're going to call it an error, it would be within a step and a half, which to me means that's about as close as you can get, without,
Yeah.
if his stride is different, maybe if the receiver's arms aren't waving wildly as he's
Yeah.
trying to like run under this, he's in more control. Maybe he bends the route a little bit different way, he catches this.
Yeah. And the good thing and the good point you made is, well, it's a stride and a half, or it's a step and a half away, but it's the right direction too. It's not an underthrown ball. He errs on the side of safety on that play.
Yeah, that's a great point. So
All
here's
right.
a question
So
I've always had
yeah.
before I just got to ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
How do you know that's going? How do you know that pressure's behind you like that? Do you hear it? Does somebody yell? What's going on?
I think because that's a really good point. Now, when I coach quarterbacks, I do everything I can not to use audible commands. So whenever we're doing pocket movement, a lot of coaches will clap or they'll yell. I think what's important about playing quarterback is being able to pick things up visually. I think this is something that he sees earlier, and there's almost the sixth sense. There's no magical sixth sense, but I think peripherally he's probably seeing the bad color out of the corner of his eye. My coach always used to say, "Don't see the pressure, feel the pressure," and you know that eventually you've got X amount of time. And you're gonna there's a clock in your head. The way I teach quarterbacks is through steps. You're gonna look at the average 5-step drop or 3-step out of shotgun. The back foot's got to hit by about 1.8 seconds. So he's taken 2 hitches. He's into his second hitch. By then, as a quarterback, you're thinking that's 2.2, almost 2.6 seconds from the snap of the football. There's going to be some kind of movement. Some kind of pressure, and that's a phenomenal job. There's some guys that don't pick that stuff up, but I think that's something he picks up earlier and just knows in the back of his head the timeline of a play. The great ones understand, they have the DNA built in. They get the timeline built in. They know that if I haven't thrown the ball by this time, I need to be moving somewhere based on, the time it takes a defensive end to get off the edge, et cetera, the depth of my drop. It's something I think you can teach to a certain extent, but this guy just pulls the trigger at the right time and does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and there's a thing to be said about, again, this is having great rhythm. It's just having
Yeah.
great sense of time, and time is a skill, no matter what it is, and he has timing.
No doubt, and it extends the play. And I think, again, this is one of the evaluation tools that I look for in quarterbacks. I look for, we call it, we look for unbroken movement. We look in the throw. We look for accuracy. We look for arm speed, how quickly the arm moves. Athletically, play extender, a survivor. We don't need a guy to run a 4.40. That's so overrated.
Yeah,
Does he,
it's a 3 time a season event, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, and I think guys are realizing that now, Coach. I see it in the college world. The emphasis on 40 time is not as big as it was about 5 years ago in terms of recruiting guys that can run, extend the play. So this is an interesting thing here. I like this play. This is one thing I always check to make sure quarterbacks can do, and it's subtle, but it's ball out on rhythm, meaning 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and no reset step. 1, 2, 3, ball out, and,
Yeah.
and that's a thing that starts off in high school and can the earlier you can get that figured out, the better. Um, you got to think that a hitch step adds an additional zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.4 seconds onto the final time the ball is released. So you're talking about making a 4.4 cornerback run a 4.2 if you're zero point 0.2 seconds later. So this is a great job of understanding. He's got a speed out on the outside. Boom, rip it. He's got the arm strength to throw that. Not sure if it was a completion or not, but it does show his.
Yeah, it went through Green's hands on this one. He gets
Oh, he
his
did.
hands on it, but goes through. Yeah. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, that's again, and it also costs the receiver steps and how he adjusts.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
this was right in stride. It just was a little high for him, and he doesn't look it in as well as he could have. But again, yeah, I
This is.
love your point about rhythm of the play. Let's go back.
Yep.
What were we going to say?
Well, yeah, this is a good job here. Check downs for first downs, right? I mean, this is, I think, as important as any quarterback. The famous four verts play or whatever play you have called, coming down underneath just to take what the defense gives you, is something that takes some guys a couple years to figure out in the NFL. He's got that down for the most part, of realizing, hey, this is what they're giving me. I'm going to take it. That's a great job on that play.
Yeah, don't be a hero.
Yeah.
Another
Same
one.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what's interesting here is you start to see, though, and this is one of the things where I think he throws a couple picks here. If you go back at the beginning of this play, it's a defender key read. So he's making a read off a defender, and then making the decision to throw the football based on the leverage of the defender. But this is where he starts to get himself into a couple problems. You'll see on the picks he throws later in the game. He doesn't give the defense anything else to look at. It's just 1, 2, 3. I'm looking at the defender. I'm waiting, and when the defenders start to figure out, okay, he's giving us what he's going to take, and so this is that next level, right? I mean, defenses adjust. Like, he is throwing what he's looking at, and he's waiting for us, and then he's going to react based on our reaction. So a smart defender starts to pick up on these things. I think Aaron Rodgers spent his entire last offseason mixing up his specific drops to throw defensive backs off. He does a great job. Whether it's just at the beginning of the play, you hold the safety, or you look at the strong side back, or whatever it may be, just to give him one more step. This is where I think he starts to, again, makes a great play here, just gets the ball down, but I think he's starting to, habit-wise, you got to give these guys something else pre-snap, first step of the snap, just to mix it up a little bit.
You got to tell them stories between series to series as opposed to same play after same play.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's a
Yeah,
nice pull.
yeah, it's a rope right there. That's a good throw, and that just shows his arm strength, um, and his ability to drive the football.
Now talk about people who quarterbacks who step through throws using their legs. I've always heard
Hmm.
quarterbacks using their legs to generate power and quarterbacks use their hips to generate power. Is that
Yeah,
a is that the case? And can you talk a little bit about the differences with those?
yeah, absolutely. So I would say that this is a very interesting subject because the most overlooked thing, it was just, when you look at a quarterback, and if you use arm, the distance of how far you throw the football is as kind of an indicator. What's interesting about throwing the football is that if you throw the football as far as you possibly can on two legs, so you step into the ball, let's say you throw it 70 yards on 2 feet. If you go down on one knee, okay, so you put one knee on the ground and you throw the ball as far as you can, it's not 50% of how far you can throw it on 2 feet. It's about 70 to almost 75% sometimes. So you could throw the ball 55 yards on one knee and probably you remember seeing Jamarcus Russell stand on
Yeah.
put one knee on the goal line and throw it through the goalpost. So that's a 65-yard throw. He didn't throw. I mean, he threw the ball probably 83 yards, 84 yards
Yeah.
on 2 feet. So what that tells me is okay. Well, what really generates a lot of the force in the throw, and the legs are definitely a power source, but you got to look at the lower body is kind of the bottom. It's the support system for the throw. I can get you into a lot of trouble. It can get you out of trouble. The power starts from impact with the ground, but the reality is the arm is where a lot of this the generation, the torque between the hips and the shoulders and the speed of the arm is one of the most underrated things. I look to see how quickly that arm moves through from the beginning part of the throw to the end. What opened my eyes is I had a young college quarterback that started at University of San Diego. He was 169 pounds and he could throw the football 72 yards, and that didn't make sense to me. How can someone so frail have such an amazing arm? And the speed he generated of his arm moving from point A to point B was substantial. So when you look at the lower body, what you'll notice in James's game, he kind of takes these long, sliding, flowing steps. He's always kind of got his toes kind of pointed out, and he sinks his hips a little bit too much. Where I see some of the issues with him with generating consistency in his power and delivery, you see right there, this is really good. So he generally pulls his left side open a little bit too erratically. And you can see the width of his front step. So in relationship to where he's throwing the football, he's stepping too far to the left. He's actually got a little bit too much knee bend. You can see how there's this press of the chest, how he's almost pressing the chest through the throw.
Yeah, it's almost like he juts it out,
Yes. So you can still deliver a powerful throw. I mean, that's simply almost it's the transition from throwing pitching a baseball
Yeah.
and this throw. You can see the bleed over in both. But the reality is he's so strong, he's able to get that arm still through and deliver a lot of velocity. You can see the tilt. He's almost at the end of his throw. He's pulling his left side away. He's not very upright. To a point where he locks out that lead leg and kind of loses it as a source of energy. There was a little bit of talk about him having some shoulder issues, pre-combine. I think a lot of that's to do with lack of core strength, lack of stability in his lower body, easily things that are fixed out. And those where mechanics are important.
And that makes sense because I always wondered about, you got smaller guys. You'll hear people say, well, this guy's a smaller quarterback, and like David Fales last year was a good example of
Right.
a player that was, people would say, I think he can develop more arm strength, and the reasons that were given were adding weight, adding good core
Yeah.
strength,
Yeah. So I think weights. There's basically four types of strength. You have speed strength, you have strength speed, you have maximal strength, and you have the absolute speed. So there's four levels to strength. Adding weight doesn't equal. Otherwise, you'd have 300-pound linemen with cannon arms, and some of them do. But it's about how quickly can you move that arm through the throw, how fast, how much velocity, how much explosiveness. I think that's what you look for in NFL quarterbacks. Is the guy explosive? And you'll see guys like, I think, Drew Brees over the years has increased his arm strength, which is not too common. I mean, the difference in strength between NFL quarterbacks and college quarterbacks is not a whole lot. I mean, these guys don't go to the NFL and start, benching 500 pounds and doing all these crazy lifts. If anything, a lot of these guys cut back on their lifting and they focus on. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I spent a good hour the other day speaking with Aaron Rodgers' off-season trainer, Angelo Poli, and the things that they work on are all focused on multitasking, is core strength, explosiveness, things that make you a great quarterback. Another on-rhythm throw there. That's a great job. Mechanically, chest is a little open, but the guy can generate force through such just a strong arm.
And how's he going to learn this stuff? Because I listen to somebody like Ryan Riddle, and he says, "Look, most coaching I had was based on scheme in the NFL. I learned a lot from my peers, or I hired someone like you. That's kind of like."
Yeah, and then that's the reality. I mean, quarterback coaches in the NFL are generally X's and O's guys that have aspirations to be offensive coordinators. There's the big. Like, look how wide he is there. He's just entirely too wide. But let's see if he can pull it off here. And that's a pick. Look at that. All right, so you got to look at two things here. Does he throw the pick because he's too wide? No, it's just a bad decision. But,
right.
What's impressive is he can still generate any kind of velocity there. You look at the pressure in the face. So what he does is he jabs backwards with his back leg. It kind of puts him in a compromised position. This is one of those ones where he's got to live to play another down. I don't want to say take the sack, but I'd rather take the sack or just throw the ball away, chuck it in the dirt. It's either an issue of like, hey, I think my arm's better than it really is.
Yeah.
But ill-advised throw here, and I think this is where you start to get. Look at the leverage that this backer is playing on. If we go back through, see, this is where we're starting to get in the trouble. His eyes are on it late, early and late. So.
Yeah, and it's the same concept with any young player. A defensive end who thinks that he can always get around the edge, a wide receiver who thinks he doesn't have to learn how to release off the line of scrimmage and just kind of outrun you with his speed and beat you, or a running back who thinks he can bounce everything outside. I think it's a similar young mentality or inexperienced mentality of it's always helped me out. I've never been beaten here, and I try and tell this to people all the time. When you get to this level, it's because you've proven people either wrong or right that you have the arm strength to do this. And until someone shows you otherwise, until they prove it to you that you can't do it consistently, you're going to keep trying.
Absolutely. Sometimes talent is the worst. You look at Vince Young. I think is a great example of a guy who had so much talent. His mechanics were left alone because he always got the job done. Well, but eventually it catches up. That's the NFL. Everyone catches up. There's a window in college. There's a 4 to 5 year window in college. In theory, there's no window in the NFL. Like, everyone has time to work on their craft. So, what got you there doesn't necessarily keep you there.
Yeah, and you can see the defender looking over his shoulder at Winston as he drops here. He's watching him the whole time, and the cut, it's done right there. It's over.
Yeah. It's not even that's one of those throws where it's not even a question whether could he have completed that. That's panic mode right there.
Yeah.
I think he comes back on the next play and throws another pick. Did he?
There we go. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Little space cadet moment here, and again, this is one of those things where how do you respond after you throw a pick? If you can see, let's see, it was a first and 10, and we have no one within. Look at the we're starting to figure out here where There's no threat for run here whatsoever. There's no look at these backers just everyone's just gone. I mean, there's nothing there. It's first down and 10. They're down by 14. Um, this is where a nice one. Look, Jameis, just take the check down, bud. You got the swing, the flat here. Everyone's
Yeah.
covered, and that's a first down.
You got
First
a
and 10
four,
especially.
yeah, and you got a 4.48 back who can catch a football pretty darn well right
Yeah,
here
yeah,
and break a
and
couple of tackles.
and there's not enough pressure there, in my opinion, to justify just hey, get the ball out of your hands. I felt like at this part of the game, he just kind of got. You don't know whether it was in his head or not, but he just wasn't processing clearly, and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like he's pressing to just try and he wants to come back and throw another haymaker at you to kind of like erase what just happened.
exactly, and that's the patience you have to have when you get to
And it's
the
interesting
NFL.
because I mean maturity is I I've certainly have met plenty of people in life who have no maturity in their personal life, but
Right.
people who have absolute unbelievable discipline and maturity in their professional life. So
Yes.
I think I find this is the thing that's so interesting about a guy like Winston, and we won't get into his off-field stuff, but it's
Yeah.
certainly, the word on him is that he, from people I've talked to who have got a chance to observe interviews or met people who have, the rumor, I'll put it because I have no fact to state this, is that
Mhm.
he's a somewhat immature guy, but that his
Yeah.
teammates would follow him off a cliff, and that
Absolutely.
and so you know what, I get that the guys aside
Yeah.
of what he was accused of, I've met plenty of guys in their early 20s who were immature, but when it comes to like getting the job done, I probably would have followed them off a cliff too.
No doubt. I think you look at a guy last year, Johnny Manziel. The most talked about quarterback ever that hasn't done anything yet in the NFL. But I tell you what, you watch that game against him at Duke, he just took it over, and that maturity on the field is unreal.
Yeah.
And this is good. He's just coming back down and reestablishing, where his offensive coordinator got in his face or something. Just come back down, play the game. Nice job of reading there. He's reading the flow of the defense and working. Before the last play, you can see his eyes are kind of down the middle, checking what the middle safety is doing. He's looking for that vertical route. Nothing's there. One hitch, check down. Beautiful job. First down. I mean, that's let your guys do that's a great thing about playing quarterback, man. Let all the other guys get the yardage for you.
Yeah, delegate.